It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant Prime.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs.
And we welcome you to Friday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. So glad you could join us. Now, today we are going to do our San Francisco 49ers summer training camp preview. As we know, we've been going through a series of the Giants' opponents during the course of the past week. We come to you from the Giants Podcast Studio, presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And on the line right now, joining us, and we are so grateful for her time, is Jennifer Lee Chan, 49ers beat reporter for NBC Sports Bay Area in San Francisco. Jennifer, thanks so much, and I can only say training camp is going to be here before both of us know it.
Yeah, already it's like just a few weeks away. I can't believe we're almost in July. Where did the off season go already?
For sure. Hey, I'm going to start this with something that just happened a couple of days ago, because Brandon Ayuk, who had suffered a serious knee injury last year, and he's trying to work his way back, was the subject of some off-season trade rumors. And then the other day, I guess on social media, he got a little snippy. What is the situation right now with him and the Niners? We know that obviously there was a contract issue, before last season as well.
I think everything contract-wise and with the team, I think everything relationship-wise there is fine. Obviously, he's recovering from an ACL injury, and there was also MCL and other damage in there. So it happened, week 6 last year. It's going to take a while for him to get back to normal, but he was out there at mandatory minicamp, kind of as a auxiliary coach. He's been in the wide receivers room working with the young guys that are there, and it remains to be seen how his recovery is going, when he's going to get back on the field. But I expect that he'll probably start the season on the PUP list and will work his way back to getting on the field.
Now, I think I saw Pearsall pulled something the other day, too. So it seems to me right now, two of their lead guys, I know Jennings is also there, but two of their high-profile guys are a little bit of a question mark coming in, right?
Yeah, the wide receivers room is really questionable altogether. I mean, Jauan Jennings obviously took over that wide receiver 1 position last year with Brandon Ayuk out and Deebo Samuel kind of up and down. So this year it really is Jauan Jennings. Ricky Pearsall pulled his hamstring, or had a little bit of a hamstring strain during OTAs, but he was healthy enough to participate in minicamp. He was running on the side field with trainers. He is expected to be ready to go for training camp. So he is, a guy that they're looking towards to make a step up. Jacob Cowing, who is primarily a returner last year, is also a guy that they're looking at to, make progress to being more involved in the offense. And then Demarcus Robinson is a guy who really had a lot of chemistry with Brock Purdy and Mac Jones, who is now Brock Purdy's backup. But Demarcus Robinson is facing a potential up to 3-game suspension for a DUI charge that happened in November last year. So we'll see what happens there. So yes, wide receivers, who's going to be on the field, very much in flux at this point.
Now, I wonder what happens to the Deebo Samuel part of the playbook. Now he's with the Washington Commanders. Do the Niners try to fit somebody into that mold? Because he had a very unique skill set. So did they just decide that, okay, that chapter doesn't exist anymore?
I think as a wide receiver, if for a player that's technically labeled as a wide receiver, I think it's not going to happen there. But looking at the running backs who now are more pass catchers, they do have a couple of those. Isaac Guerrero is known as a better route runner. Also, the guy that they drafted, Jordan James, he's a guy who also is a good route runner. So maybe the running backs, as opposed to the wide receivers, take over that multi or dual threat position. And then Christian McCaffrey looks really healthy. He looks happier, faster. I guess John Lynch called him bouncy. So just watching him, obviously no pads on, shorts and T-shirts, but he looks like he did before the 2023 season. So maybe that dual threat happens from the running back position as opposed to the wide receiver position.
I'm interested about what you said about McCaffrey, because he's been in this league for a while now. We all know how great he is. My goodness, he's one of the top 3 all-around backs in this league. At least I still believe so. But he certainly has had some wear on his tires, and he's had a number of injuries over the course of time. Is there any thought that they need to lighten his workload some?
I mean, I think us outside the building always say that because, you got to save him for when they really need it at the end of the season or, when games are close. But I know that it's really hard to take him off the field, and it's hard for him to want to come off the field. He never wants to. He wants to be out there every single play, but he's feeling much healthier than he was last year. He was dealing with that bilateral Achilles tendonitis last year. He was really starting to look like himself when he got into that Buffalo game, when he had that kind of really awkward tackle. His knee hit the ground, and then he had that PCL injury. So coming back to it, he probably could have played at the end of the year last year, but again, they wanted to be careful with him, and then there was no point in him playing because it was a 6-11 season for them. So he is looking healthy. He's feeling healthy. When you spoke to all of us local media, he's like, I feel just like how I did before the 2023 season. So obviously they're being judicious with his reps, but he was on the field every single practice that was open to the media during OTAs and minicamp, and he looks great.
Oh, well, that's certainly good news for Niners fans. Now they need to make sure they blow some holes for him, though. The offensive line right now, I don't know. Is there much of a change from what we've seen before? I guess there was the Notre Dame guard who left via free agency, Banks, right?
Right. Aaron Banks has left, and then their swing tackle, Jalen Moore, is now the left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. Aaron Banks goes to the Green Bay Packers. So there is, yes, an open spot at that left guard position, but it's guys that they've had. So there's, the room that they have, mostly guys that have been there for a little while, and they're just going to have an open competition. Ben Barch is a guy who they have had in there as well. They really are not a team that goes out and gets high-priced free agents. Trent Williams is the guy who makes a ton of money on the offensive line. The rest of them are kind of guys that aren't really well known throughout the league. But, I think when you look at, I think people were kind of down on the offensive line performance in 2024 that were outside the building, but John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan both say, hey, we like our offensive line. We like our center. We like how they perform. When Christian McCaffrey's on the field, the offensive line doesn't have to do as much. When he's not on the field, they have to do a lot more. So they kind of go in conjunction. So with a healthy Christian McCaffrey, I think people are going to be much happier with the offensive line performance.
Well, people outside San Francisco, and this is no surprise to you, Jennifer, they all say, well, that's a systematic running game anyway. You don't need to have superstars on the offensive line. Although, again, Trent Williams has had a very accomplished career. I don't want to disrespect him in any way. But there's this assumption that if you just have some capable bodies, you're going to find a way to get this scheme to work.
Right, and it all goes, it's all connected to how the running backs perform. And then also, Brock Purdy, how fast does he get rid of the ball? Is he holding on the ball? Whoever is back there behind center, are they, creating a situation where the offensive line has to protect for 2 to 3 seconds as opposed to a second or a second and a half? I mean, those minuscule points of time make a huge difference on what the job of the offensive line has to be.
So Brock Purdy is a richer man today than he was some time ago.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Do you see much of a change in his approach, his attitude, his mentality?
None at all. He is a worker. He's a preparer. From guys like, and this is what I found fascinating, Sam Darnold, who obviously took a huge jump being his backup, went to Minnesota, had a great season. I got a chance to speak to Sam Darnold after that, and I was like, hey, what did you learn from Brock Purdy? It helped you in your success. And he said the way he prepares for a game. And I wouldn't think that a first-round pick, like Sam Darnold, would say, I learned how to prepare from Brock Purdy. But I think when, maybe the measurables that you see at the combine, like the arm strength and the height and all the other things that, everybody outside of teams values in a quarterback, when that is not 99th percentile, that you find other ways to be successful. And I think that's what Brock Purdy is. He is such a stickler for the details. And sometimes, and I'm not saying this is Sam Darnold, but I'm just saying sometimes when you get guys who have been where everything has been easy for them from high school to college to, their transition to the NFL, it's been easy. They might not necessarily do all the work. They might not necessarily know the playbook as well as Brock Purdy found, dissects it. And the way he prepares really is something that a lot of veteran quarterbacks, a lot of his backups have said that they've learned from him, because the way he knows everything inside and out. When I see him in the locker room, he's got papers in his hands. He's got his iPad in his hands. He is going through everything that he is asked to do with a fine-tooth comb, and that obviously shows up when he's on the field.
You know, that's the way Eli Manning was when he was a young quarterback with the Giants. Not that it ever stopped, because he was as studious a QB as I've ever come across, a pro's pro in every way. And look, obviously, everyone has doubted Purdy every step of the way. And even as he continues to move forward in his NFL career and gets a big contract, there are still people who say, well, he didn't deserve that. So, you know, keep the same approach. Why not?
I mean, you just look at his performance. Even though they were 6-11 last year, all the different statistics that he has had, you know, rating and completions, and how, you know, his sack to interception to touchdown ratio, all of those things are still really high, even though they had a 6-11 season. So, you know, there are issues with the defense last year. There are issues, you know, across the board last year. But if you just take his statistics and how he operated as a quarterback and a leader of the team, still upper third.
All right, I got to go to the tight end for a second here. George Kittle, since he came into the league, he was a guy who I was desperate to get on the Giants when he came out in the draft. So this is a sore spot for me. Okay, the fact that I got to talk about a potential Hall of Famer with the 49ers. Had a sensational season statistically last year. In fact, it's almost like he's in his second prime, it seems, because he had a little bit of a downer in a few years there with his stats, and now they're back up again. What do you see from Kittle? Is he, in fact, drinking from the fountain of youth? Does he look as sharp as ever and as dangerous as ever?
Yeah, he really does. And he talks about his health, and he was, you know, he's been up and down with it. But after his rookie season, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan sat down with him and said, hey, this is what you've got to do. You've got to, and I think this is the story for a lot of guys coming in the NFL. You know, when you're 20, your body is like a rubber band, and you bounce back, and it's much easier to recover when you're coming out of college. But when you're in the NFL and you're going against guys who are faster, stronger, et cetera, you know, it takes a lot more to recover. It's more longer season, more games, more reps. And so he's really found a way to take care of his body. He does everything from cold plunges to red light therapy to acupuncture to massage. Like, he really does everything he can to take care of his body and get it back to what it needs to be for a season. Now, that doesn't say that he's completely healthy at the end of the season. I don't think he ever is at the end of a season. But this extra month of time off because they didn't go to the playoffs, you know, they had an extra month, and he said he's feeling so much better than he has, better than any offseason since 2020 when they didn't go to the playoffs. So I would expect another huge season from him. He is a pretty security blanket. You know, he's where he needs to be at all times. Great run blocker, great pass protector. I mean, I don't think there's anything that George Kittle can't do.
No, I know. I know. When he came out of school, I knew it.
Sorry.
I knew it. I wanted him in the worst way.
10th round pick. It's unbelievable.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it. All right, let's flop it to defense now. I want to go to the front seven to start off here, because there's a very specific question. They pick up Mykel Williams in the first round. They get Alfred Collins in the second round. Two very highly thought-after defensive linemen in the draft. On the flip side to that, they got the old guys there too. They got Nick Bosa, they got Fred Warner, older guys in the front seven. But Greenlaw's now with Denver after getting hurt last year and missing most of the season. He escapes to the Broncos. What can we expect out of this front seven?
Yeah, along with wide receivers, defensive line is a position that is very much in flux, but they do have guys that can take over. Now, you know, we just watched them in shorts and T-shirts, so we'll see how they are once they get the pads on. I talked to Chris Kasarik, their defensive line coach, and he's like, they all look good on paper. They look good when they're out on the field. So we'll see what happens when they get the pads on. That's, everybody's emphasis was like, sure, they can look good now, but once they get the pads on, that's when it counts. Yes, Nick Bosa, and he would be really mad if he heard that you called him the old guy.
I don't want to get him mad. Don't tell him.
That might be more motivation when they play the Giants.
Oh, no. We're going to burn this tape. We're going to burn this tape, Jennifer. He's never going to see it.
So they did bring in Bryce Huff, who's a guy who I think, in Philly, just wasn't put in the right position. I think with his hand in the ground, he'll be a little bit better on the defensive line. Just getting up after the quarterback, I think it's a better situation for him. Robert Saleh is back at defensive coordinator, so he knows exactly what to do to get Bryce Huff to be productive. And, it's just how quickly can those defensive linemen, the rookies, get up to speed with what Chris Kasiarek wants and what the team wants them to do on the defensive line. Michael Williams has been on the field. He had a little bit of a hamstring tightness, so he wasn't on minicamp, but we did see him do some work on the field. The one that has kind of everybody a little bit concerned, not completely concerned, but Alfred Collins has not been on the field at all yet. He had that calf injury that he went through during his pro day, so we have not seen him on the field at all, not even rookie minicamp. The word is that he'll be ready for training camp, but we have not seen him in a uniform on the field at all yet. So hopefully, he's a guy that gets healthy during the off season and does the work before he gets to training camp so he can, hit the ground running. Another guy that they drafted, C.J. West. They took 4 defensive linemen in the first 5 picks. C.J. West was out there. Looks like he could be a rotational guy. So defensive line, it's how can they adjust? How can they be ready? And then at linebacker, that is also a question. Fred Warner, obviously one of the best to play the position. As you said, Dre Greenlaw has moved on, but Dee Winters is a guy who's been around for a while. He looked like he would be the second to Fred Warner. They also drafted a guy, Nick Martin, not a huge linebacker, kind of looks like a safety size, but he's very agile, great in coverage. So they're looking to see what he can bring to the defense when he gets going at training camp as well.
All right, now we go to the secondary, and Hufanga is obviously a former Pro Bowler and a guy who was the leader back there, at least from afar. Often injured, and that was a problem. He was never, I think once in his career he was available for the entire season. He's moved on via free agency. So now what are they going to do in terms of finding an identity back there? Who is the guy they want to look to lead that group?
So Malik Mustafa was a rookie last year, and he really, because of injury to Talanoa Hufanga, who is now with Denver with Dre Greenlaw. Malik Mustafa suffered an ACL injury in the last game, so we'll see how fast he gets back up to speed. But he's a guy that they really liked, hard hitter, great in coverage. But he showed a video of himself on social media running. When I saw him at minicamp, he was walking around hanging out with the safeties, but he wasn't completely straightening that leg. So, a little bit more rehab needs to be done to get that full mobility in that right leg.
So former Giant Jason
is
Pinnock
a guy who also has played a lot of reps at starting safety as well. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, as you were talking about the injury with Malik, I was going to say former Giant safety Jason Pinnock went and signed a free agent deal out there. Was he their emergency plan?
No, I think he actually will. Between him and Richie Grant, those are the 2 vets that they signed during free agency. Both of those guys could be set to be starters until Malik Mustafa is back up to speed. So Jair Brown is a guy who had a great rookie season, had a little bit of a sophomore slump, as a lot of guys do. So it could be Jair Brown, Jason Pinnock. It could be Richie Grant, Jason Pinnock. Jair Brown did have an ankle procedure during the offseason, so again, he looked to be healthy. Not enough to be on the field during minicamp, but he's a guy who I know they believe in and could be also an option at starter once training camp starts. So Malik Mustafa, not sure whether he is ready at training camp to be in team drills, but Jair Brown, Richie Grant, Jason Pinnock are guys that they could have as their safeties.
So where do you think the mentality is of this coaching staff and of this front office with this Niners team coming off a down year? They had a lot of injuries. I understand all of that. Do they think that this is part of a retooling year? They certainly had to do a number of things in the draft. We talked about it on defense more than anything else.
This offseason has been, I think, a rejuvenating one for the 49ers. 3 out of the last 4 years, they went deep into the playoffs, played a lot of extra games. And last year during minicamp and OTAs, you could sense the drama of, Trent Williams holding out, Brandon Ayuk holding out. It was Christian McCaffrey as well wanting a new deal. So there was a little hangover from the Super Bowl loss. This year, the young guys, the youth that came into the roster really has kind of upped the energy level. I think everybody's more positive. They're feeling healthier. They had a little extra time off. And I think, this does not look like a 6-11 team that's coming back. Still have lots of great vets that have been all pros. You spoke about them. It's Brock Purdy, it's Christian McCaffrey, it's George Kittle, Trent Williams. You still have Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and Deommodore Lenoir has been, got that big contract last year as well. So they have top flight players at every level. So it's just getting, everyone back up to speed, but the energy and the mood has been so much better than I've seen it in, the last couple of seasons, because they come back and it's like, they really have very little time off. The season runs so late now compared to what it used to be. So the energy level and the attitude and the mood has been really positive so far.
All right. Well, I'm going to move off the Niners for a second. If you have a couple of more minutes with us, do you?
Sure.
Okay, I got to ask you about George Kittle's tight end university. I know you've been there a number of times, and you're there again this year. The Giants sent 4 of their tight ends, Manhertz, Bellinger, Johnson, and also Fedoni, their rookie out of Nebraska, were all sent to the George Kittle, Travis Kelce tight end university thing this past month. So I'd like to ask you, you're there, you've seen it, you've been reporting on it. What is the best benefit of these guys when they go down to this workout session?
I mean, for one, it's camaraderie, building their network of people that they can reach out to. And George Kittle is the master of getting guys together and creating an environment where everybody feels comfortable with everyone else to have a resource of information and knowledge. And so it was founded by George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Greg Olsen, and the 3 of them kind of create this workshop. Now, it's one day of classroom work and field work and a lot of socialization of guys hanging out together, but they create this network. So, you can ask guys like Dallas Clark was there, Logan Thomas, guys that were veterans at Rob Gronkowski. So they were not in the league anymore. They're retired, but then now they are resources for these young tight ends to ask questions of. Greg Olsen talks about, how to be a finesse route runner, and Travis Kelce talks. I watched him talk about how when guys are that big they have to slow down their momentum to get out of their breaks. So learning the little finesse tricks to being a better tight end. George Kittle, is one of the best run blockers that's out there. And so he does a little a segment of it about run blocking. So all these young tight ends get to be able to ask questions of these guys who have been in the league for a long time, future Hall of Famers, guys who watch the league and have been involved in the league. Greg Olsen is such a great resource. Dallas Clark is, a guy who did it for a long time. So these young guys have access to these players. It's day one is kind of an opening reception. A ton of sponsors. It's also a huge fundraiser. They've raised almost $1 million last year, and their goal was to raise $1 million or more this year. And then they have a reception. Day 2 is, classroom work. So they go in and watch film, and Greg Olsen, Rob Gronkowski, those vets get up and talk about how they can be better at their job. Then they get on the field and implement all those things that they learn. And then they have a concert where a ton of Nashville stars. Kane Brown was one of the headliners, and guest appearance by Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce's paramour. So she was out. She came out for a song. Huge cheers for them also. And then the next day they do a golf tournament. And so it's just a bonding between all of the tight ends, lots of positive work on the field, and then just resources for young guys and a lot of bonding. So now, George Kittle's one of those guys who reaches out to every draft pick that goes to the Niners. And now, any tight end in the league has his phone number and they can ask him questions. And he's just so open and available to everybody who needs help or asks questions. And there's no gatekeeping at all from George Kittle.
Now, as a media member, how much of all of this stuff were you allowed to watch? Were you allowed to watch the actual drills they did on the field? I'm sure you weren't allowed in the classroom. I mean, that would be ridiculous, I would think.
Yeah, I've asked to be allowed in the classroom just as a fly on the wall, no photos, no notes, just to be there, and I was denied. NFL Network was in there, though, so they had access. But I did get to watch everything on the field. Unfortunately, there was lightning nearby, so for the end of the field drills, they did go to the indoor facility where there was no access. But I've watched this several times, and, they huddle up. Greg Olson will talk, and then they'll go through the drills that he's speaking about. And then Travis Kelce will speak, and then they go through drills about what Travis Kelce was talking about. So, there's a ton of hands-on work. There's also quarterbacks that come in. Obviously, a lot of 49ers quarterbacks, C.J. Beathard, Mac Jones, Tanner Mordecai, Brandon Allen, Will Levis was there. So they need quarterbacks to throw passes to them. So they're there.
Well, you could have volunteered to throw, Jennifer. You could have volunteered.
Just getting a little extra work in, but it's a full day from I think about 10 in the morning until about 5 o'clock at night doing the classroom and then on-field work. So, great stuff. And they get a couple local coaches to help them out as well.
Well, it sounds like a fun time. Jennifer Lee Chan, 49ers beat reporter for NBC Sports Bay Area in San Francisco. Where can folks check out on the internet to find some of your work as they want to follow the 49ers as the season progresses?
Yeah, I'm on every single media platform, I think. So it's Instagram, Twitter, I'm going to still call it that, Threads, Blue Sky, YouTube, Jennifer Lee Chan, Jennifer, Leechan, all one word, all the same handle. So, I'll especially before they meet up with the Giants, I'll be doing a Giants preview. So definitely stay up to date on all 49ers news if you need to.
That 49ers game against the Giants will be here at MetLife Stadium. That's Week 9, November the 2nd. We hope, Jennifer, with all due respect to the 49ers people out there, we hope this season is not like the last few Giants seasons and that they are still alive after Halloween. Because quite honestly, it's been a rough first half of the season for the Giants for quite a long time. I do expect them to be better. And perhaps when you come out here from San Francisco, we'll have ourselves one heck of a competitive football game.
Hope so, too. Always like a competitive game more than a blowout.
Jennifer, thank you so much for your time. Be well.
No problem. See you soon.
And we're back live on Big Blue Kickoff Live here on Friday afternoon. Our number is 201-939-4513. We now open the phone lines up for you. That was an earlier conversation I had with Jennifer Lee Chan from the NBC Sports Bay Area Sports Bureau. She is the San Francisco 49ers beat reporter and had an awful lot of good information about the Niners, who are coming off a really rough season. We know they had several very important injuries that really sidetracked them. But, of course, listening to her, we're getting the impression that they believe they're going to get right back on the horse this year and be another playoff contender. Be that as it may, they do play the Giants this year, and for a fact it's not going to be an easy ball game. Now, the other item that you heard her talk about with us was tight end university. The Giants are well represented. We mentioned the four guys that at least made a pit stop, if nothing else, at tight end university. And Matt, to me, I don't see how the Giants can keep more than 3. There seems to be some debate at maybe keeping 4, but if you do that, you're going to have to shave off a spot somewhere else. I don't know that the Giants can afford to do that. If it's 3, it's a tough competition for that 3rd spot. If it's 4, well, then it's probably a little bit easier to pick 4 guys. But it's going to be quite a battle.
Yeah, I mean, if the Giants do decide to keep 4, obviously you never know, and they have to go through training camp and the preseason, and guys that maybe are not considered a big part of the conversation right now could put themselves in the conversation with some strong performances. But it does seem like there's a little bit of a line between the top 4 and then the next 2 tight ends that are currently on the roster.
I agree.
But yeah, I mean, it'd be hard to imagine them keeping more than 3, to be honest, because you get 53 guys on the roster. If you get 4 just at the tight end position, where not always, but most of the time you only have one guy on the field, you're taking away the depth at another position. So I can't imagine they keep more than 3. And quite honestly, outside of Theo Johnson at the top of the depth chart, I know you and I might disagree a little bit on this, but outside of Theo Johnson, I think spot number 2, 3, 2 through 6, completely up for grabs. I think it's going to be that is one of the training camp competitions that I think is going to be the most heated and most intriguing to watch, because outside of Theo Johnson, I mean, the other guys all kind of have different attributes that they bring to the game. Now, I think Thomas Fidone, considering he was just selected 7th in the 7th round and showed some flashes of that, athleticism as to why he used to be the, number 1 high school tight end recruit coming out of high school before college. He was the number 1 tight end recruit above a Brock Bowers, and you kind of saw some flashes of that throughout the spring. He made some really athletic grabs, but even him, he's a rookie 7th round pick. I don't think you can say that his, it's an absolute guarantee lock that, he will make it over, let's say, Daniel Bellinger or Chris Manhertz, who obviously bring some veteran leadership and veteran experience to that tight end room. So it's definitely going to be a very intriguing training camp competition to watch.
I will agree with you as far as to say that Johnson's the only guy who 100% is going to be here.
Yeah,
I agree with that. I think Daniel Bellinger is a very strong bet to be here. You could disagree. I know John does. I don't know how Lance feels. I think there is a wide open competition for the 3 spot. And if there is a 4, it's certainly a wide open competition. I don't think that there will be a 4. So I'm with you on that one. But I do think that, much like I believe that Tay Banks does have a leg up, and it's up to him to blow the job at cornerback, I think it's up to Daniel Jones to blow his spot off this roster. I think that he's there unless he flat out loses it and screws it up. That's how I feel about him. I think he's the best all-around, well-balanced tight end on this team. And so I think he's pretty close to being assured of it, unless he screws up during camp in the preseason, which I don't think he's going to do. I feel that way about Banks too. John and I had this talk about on yesterday's show. Somebody called up and said, do you think there's really a competition there? No. Banks and Flott are not on an even playing field. They are not. Banks is ahead of him. It's his job to lose. Can Flott potentially beat him out if he has a great camp and Banks screws up? Absolutely, I think that could happen. But that doesn't mean it's an equal competition. For me, they're prodding Banks. They got a fork and they're prodding him. And they're making him believe by perception that it could be an even competition because they want to get the best out of him. The last thing you want is Tay Banks to be comfortable. He can't afford to be comfortable. He hasn't played consistently well enough in his first 2 seasons to be comfortable. You got to find a way to drag out the best out of him. And if you prod him and give him the perception that Flott could be on his tail, I think that's what the coaches are doing. I've been around this game a long time. I've seen coaches do this time and time and time again. If he screws up and Flott plays well, Flott will steal the job. I'm not saying he can't steal it, but I think he's got to steal it. I don't think this is an even race.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not really sure. I mean, if we go to training camp and Deonte Banks and Cordell Flott are splitting reps like they did in the spring, then I would tend to kind of disagree with you and think that, at least in the coaching staff's eyes, it's an open competition. Because
let's see how the preseason game goes.
Yeah, because in the spring, they really did split reps with the first team defense.
I'm well aware of that.
You could be right that was just sort of maybe coaching staff's way of, lighting a fire under Deonte Banks. That could very well be the case. I don't think you just obviously give up on a first-round pick 2 years into his career, especially when it's not like the first 2 years have been so catastrophically bad. It's been up and down.
Right.
He had flashes as a rookie that made everyone believe, all right, this is, we have our number 1 corner. Mm-hmm. Now, last year probably didn't go as well as anyone would have hoped, but no one's giving up on him yet. So,
well, even John said that he admits Banks has the higher upside and the more complete toolbox.
100%. I don't think anyone's going to argue that fact. It's just a matter of, having the tools is only so great. but you got to know how to use them and use them well in games in order to, solidify and secure your spot, especially in the starting lineup. So I guess we're going to have to see in training camp whether or not that is a real battle or not. I mean, I do think they're going to give Flott a chance to earn that spot. Now, whether they're entering camp on completely even level ground or if Deontay Banks might have a slight, advantage over Cordell Flott.
We don't know for sure.
We don't know.
I agree with that. We really don't know for sure.
But I do think both of them are going to get opportunities to line up against the Giants starting wide receivers and show the coaching staff what they can do. So
now, if the Giants, and again, I don't think there's any way they go with 4 tight ends, but if they did, what position do you suppose would lose that spot?
That is tough.
It's very tough.
Maybe safety. I feel like you just carry the top 3.
Go with 3.
I'm just trying to think of where you would maybe be able to steal a spot from, just because, as we saw last year, Tyler Newman doesn't need to come off the field.
No.
And Javon Holland, as long as he's healthy, doesn't need to come off the field much as well. So maybe that's a position where you could, steal just having having extra guy at that position on the practice squad just in case. You can elevate him on game day if need be. But again, I would not want to do that. I would want to keep it at 3, even though that might lead to some will lead to some tough decisions for the front office and the coaching staff. I would rather keep it at 3 at tight end and have a little more depth at whether it's safety or any of these other positions on the field.
See, the one way you could do what you just outlined that would make it easier to do is if you did sign a veteran defensive back who has the flexibility to play some safety if necessary.
Yeah.
If you signed a veteran corner late in the summer or during training camp, and that guy had the ability to move over and play some safety in a pinch, that would make your scenario much easier.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And there are guys who can do that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not unlike safeties in this league to be able to pinch it and play corners to play some safety when necessary. It can be done.
Again, that wouldn't be like let's start the game with this veteran corner lining up at safety. That would be if, in a pinch, 2 of the safeties get hurt and all of a sudden you only have 1 safety left. Then you shift that other guy over.
All right, let's get to the phones because, after all, we do have a little bit of time left in this show, and we certainly appreciate your participation at 201-939-4513. You can also, of course, go to #GiantsChat on Twitter or X, whatever you'd like to call it these days. People still call it Twitter, by the way.
I still call it Twitter, to be
right?
honest.
Well, it's 3-0 here. It's 3-0. We're all still calling it Twitter. So, we can go to #GiantsChat if you like, but instead right now we are going to go to the phone lines, and let's see if we can go to our first caller of the day. This is Freeze in Queens. You're first on BBKL. Hello. Are you there?
Hey, how y'all doing?
Hi.
Hey,
yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah. Everything's cool. Now, I just had a couple quick questions. What about the backfield? I know we got Scatterbull and Tracy, and we still got Singletary, right?
Yes, he is still on the team.
Okay. Yeah, so I was just thinking how would you think we'll see more split backs since that we got, they want to get Scatterbull on the field, or would you think they'll probably use him as like a fullback since he's kind of short and stout?
I mean, we have not yet to see much of Cam Scatterbull throughout the spring. He did not really do much, unfortunately, so it's tough to say, how we can't talk about how impressive he's looked because we haven't really seen him do anything on the field. However, based on what he did last year at Arizona State, I mean, he put together an absolutely special season and showed that he's capable of doing just about everything you need a running back to do. So between Tracy, Scatterbull, and even Singletary, I think all 3 of them are going to see the field on a weekly basis. Now, some will obviously get more playing time than others. I do expect, at least as of now, I think Tyrone Tracy will lead that group in touches and snaps, but Scadaboo is definitely going to see the field. And quite frankly, I think Devin Singletary is going to see the field too. He's a veteran that this coaching staff very much trusts. And they're not just going to, I don't think they're just going to ship him off to the bench and have him sit there just waiting in case someone gets hurt. I think they're going to mix him in at least a little bit to keep him, in the mix.
I'm curious, when you said split, were you referring to a split back pro set formation, or were you referring to just splitting the overall carries between the running backs? What did you mean by that?
A little bit of both. A little bit of both. The formation, so they both could be on the field at the same time, vice versa, just one person in, one person out. And, your regular formations when you do, single back or whatever, you give some breathing time and it'd be like a rotation. Like how we had Bradshaw and Jacobs.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if the Giants go with a lot of split back formations. I think they'd rather go with the extra wide receiver or go with the double tight end set as opposed to using a 2 running back backfield. I mean, the standard, pro set of the 1970s has pretty much gone the way of the dinosaur. Nobody really uses that on a regular basis anymore. And I don't necessarily think that this team is going to be itching to do so.
I will say, though, given the skill sets of both Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scadaboo, the Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, they definitely have the option to run that formation, because if you have both of them on the field, the opposing defense is going to have no idea if you're A, running the ball, and if so, which of those backs are going to get the ball, and B, if it's a passing play, which of those guys are going to go out for a route, and if both go out for a route, those are 2 very capable pass catchers that a linebacker or 2 linebackers are going to have to try to match up and defend. So I agree, we probably will not see it too often just because we don't see it too often, period. Even with, the Detroit Lions with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, they barely ever run that formation. Right. So I don't know if we're going to see it too often, but it certainly will be, in the playbook and option if they decide they want to run it, because those 2 backs especially are capable of doing basically anything you need a running back to do.
Yeah, I'm gonna build off of what Matt just said because he gave me a little bit of an idea. I think the plays in which you might see both running backs on the field at the same time will not be a split back pro set. What you would probably see is them line up maybe in an I, and then pre-snap motion, one of the guys winds up motioning out of the backfield. And then by the time the ball is snapped, there's only one guy in the backfield. I think that's more likely what you would see in plays when both of them are on the field together.
Yeah, either way will work. That's what I was saying, because if you line up like a fullback, since he's, in the I, then like you said, the the motion, he'll go out. Or he could do the same from the split back formation and one motion out or whatever. Whole bunch of confusion, all of that.
Yeah. Just like we've been talking about on defense with Shane Bowen being able to use all these edge rushers in a creative way to confuse opposing offenses. Brian Dable and Mike Kafka have a lot of pieces on offense that they can now use to do the same thing to opposing defenses, just confuse the heck out of them.
I just have one requirement. Block it. Just make sure you block it correctly. That's all I care about.
Yeah. And last 2 quick points. Being that this is Jalen Hyatt is a big year for Hyatt, you think he'll be on the inside or he's going to stay on the outside? And the other last question is, do you think, being that we have all these edge rushers and decks, do you think we'll see a lot of our sub-package will probably be the base package for the NASCAR, like how we had Kiwanuka and Tuck and OC? And that's my last question.
Thanks for the call.
Thank you, Freeze.
Be well. Well, let's take these one at a time. Let's go in reverse order. I think to call the NASCAR package 2.0 to come back again, they're not going to line up quite like that, because the NASCAR package was 4 guys down.
Yeah,
that's not what we're going to see with this defense. I'm very pleased to tell you that I believe Shane Bowen will shy away from using Burns and Thibodeau with their hands on the ground. He did it a ton last year. I, for one, did not like it. I did not think it worked very well, especially when teams decided to run against it. I am a much bigger proponent out of those guys standing up. I think they're going to do more standing up this year. That's my anticipation. So in that regard, it will look different than the old Spagnuolo NASCAR.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's going to look like that NASCAR package necessarily looked, but I will say I think this group of edge rushers, and this
you'll see a lot of them.
They have the potential. I'm not going to say they are better because they have not all played together yet. They've not all, had incredibly successful seasons together yet, like we saw those guys with 15 plus years ago do, but they definitely have the potential to be better than that NASCAR package. The potential.
Wow, that's asking a lot.
I didn't say they will, but they certainly, with Abdul Carter now in the mix, they have the potential. It's because that group didn't have a Dexter Lawrence. And I know Dexter Lawrence doesn't quite necessarily fit in the quote-unquote, NASCAR package fit, because that was more like 4 edge rushers all on the line of scrimmage.
Right.
But honestly, Dex gives you even way more of a mismatch than any of those guys 15 years ago did, because he's a 340-pound interior defensive lineman that's going to line up at the nose tackle and completely blow up the interior of your offensive line on a nearly play-by-play basis.
I'm going to double-check this a second now because I want to just make sure I got this number exactly right.
While you looked it up, I just want to give you one stat.
Yeah.
This was the Giants Now that I wrote up yesterday. Steve Palazzolo,
yes, who
formerly of Pro Football Focus, and Sam Monson, also formerly of PFF, started a new podcast together, and they were talking about the elite of the elite on defense, and they, of course, mentioned Dexter Lawrence as one of the elite, and they gave the stat that since the start of the 2022 season, Dexter Lawrence has 103 pressures when lined up at the nose tackle position. Now, I know you may not love the pressure stat, but just bear with me.
It's a big number.
103 since the start of the 2022 season. So 3 seasons, 103 pressures just lined up in nose tackle. Number 2 of pressures lined up in nose tackle since 2022 is Vita Vea. Very, very talented player. He's at 23. He has 80 less pressures than Dexter Lawrence. And Palazzolo mentions, when you get a pressure from nose tackle, it is by far the most disruptive because you are blowing up 1, if not 2, of the guys on the interior line.
Especially when he weighs 340.
Yeah, and you're forcing the quarterback to evacuate the pocket and go to go outside where you hopefully have your 2 edge rushers waiting to take him down. So, it's not the NASCAR package of old. It's not, and I've seen plenty of people try to compare it since the selection of Abdul Carter. It's not that unit. But, and I've said this time and time again, they have the potential to be very special this year with those 4 leading the way.
Understood. About the 2007 NASCAR, Tuck, Umanura, Freddie Robbins, and Michael Strahan, I wanted to confirm it because I thought Freddie Robbins had 5 sacks. He had 5.5 that year. And he was the nose tackle in that front. Think about that. All right? Think about that for just a second. Tuck, Umanura, Strahan, Freddie Robbins. Oh, that's a very high bar. I appreciate you said potential. You didn't say that they would match them. I don't see how they could do that.
Well, in 2007, obviously Michael Strahan is a Hall of Famer, obviously. But in 2007, his final season, he was not the Michael Strahan of earlier in his career.
Understood.
Were any of those guys all pros in 2007?
You know what? I don't know.
I don't think any of those guys in 2007 were as dominant as we have seen Dexter Lawrence be these last 3 years. And I know that's just one guy.
But I guess my point is, Freddie Robbins was nothing to sneeze at nose tackle.
No, of course not.
Freddie was really good.
I think he is one of the more underrated Giants.
At least
of the last couple decades.
Absolutely believe that.
100%.
Absolutely do I believe that. Freddie Robbins, vastly underrated.
But
just like Kareem McKenzie was.
But just in terms of this year's unit, Dexter Lawrence, at least going off of the last couple of seasons, and we haven't seen Abdul Carter yet, but Dexter Lawrence is the most dominant of the group right now. And the fact that he's having that dominant performance coming from the interior that's going to help elevate the guys on the edge. And they're going to give them a lot more opportunities to finish plays, get the sacks up, get the sack numbers up. So,
hey,
again, this is no disrespect to the NASCAR package, because the NASCAR package is what won the Giants 2 Super Bowls and some elite performances by Eli and a couple of, pass catchers. It was a whole team effort. But those NASCAR packages were phenomenal. And I'm not saying that this year's group is going to be better than them, because it wouldn't be disrespectful to those guys. But they do have the potential. Like, we could be having a conversation 7 months from now being like, this was the greatest Giants pass rush, at least of the last 20-plus years.
There were no All-Pros in 2007 on the defense, but Justin Tuck went to the Pro Bowl.
Okay.
Justin Tuck is my favorite all-time Giant. I love Justin Tuck, and I've loved him since the day the Giants drafted him.
With good reason.
No disrespect to those guys at all.
Outstanding player.
Those were my favorite players on the Giants growing up. But this year's unit,
I hope so.
It has the potential. Again, we talk about potential. This is all on paper, but they have the potential to be absolutely elite. If Abdul Carter can live up to expectations, Brian Burns can stay healthy, Kayvon just kind of needs to just do what he's been doing, because I think he's been better than people give him credit for.
Oh, I agree with that.
And Dexter Lawrence, again, him also just continue what he's been doing. The Giants finished 8th in the NFL in sacks last year.
I know.
And that's with Dexter and Kayvon combined to miss 10 games. Aziz missed 6 games. They didn't have Abdul Carter, and Brian Burns has played hurt almost the entire year. Now, injuries are going to happen again, but if that unit can stay on the field for most of the season as a group, I can't, if they finished 8th in the league in sacks last year, then what are they going to do this year?
I hope so. I'm just saying you're setting the bar really high. Really high.
But I'm just going based off of last year, not to mention year 2 in Shane Bowen's defense.
I hope so.
Everything on paper has me thinking that this unit could be elite, but potential. These are all hypothetical words.
I know.
It doesn't matter until they actually do it on Sundays. Starting week 1.
Mark in Barbados, you're next on the program. Hello.
Well, hi guys. How you guys doing?
Hi.
What's up, Mark?
Good. I'm good, and I'm listening, and I can't believe that Matt is being the optimist and Paul is being the pessimist on that.
I'm just trying to pump the brakes a little bit here, because even though I think this has a legitimate shot at being a top 10 defense, and who knows, man, if they go through the ceiling, they could maybe even be a top 5. If everybody just rocks it the way they can and plays the whole season, I'm with Matt in terms of the potential is there. But I don't want to start cooking the sauce too early, I just don't.
Yeah, I understand. Well, I tell you, talking about the defense, I had the pleasure of having dinner with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns last night.
Nice.
And had a chance to sit down and chat with them. And
did you pick up the check?
For a couple hours over dinner. Sorry. No, the entity that was hosting it picked up the tab.
Very nice.
I just happened to have a little connection with that, so I was able to sit down and chat with them, and also Ethan as well, and a couple others.
Ethan's great.
So it was a great discussion last night. They certainly are optimistic about the season coming up for sure.
Well, I can assure you Ethan won't have any sacks this year. That's a guarantee. There's no ceiling on his number. He's getting 0.
No. So the other thing I wanted to say that, and I'm down here in Barbados, and the other thing I want to do is contribute to that, the 4 tight ends, whether to have 4 tight ends or not. And I actually have 4 tight ends being kept for the 53, but who knows? But I've got actually a whole list. But I know that means that you got to drop somebody off somewhere. But
so where are you taking the spot from? Come on, where are you taking it?
I've got 5 receivers.
You're gonna slice the receivers to add a tight end.
Yes.
How?
Because I think that well, I got the 5 receivers, which are the 4 obvious ones, and then Smith Marset as I'm counting as a receiver. He's a retainer. But all the other receivers are all undrafted guys. So I'm thinking that they will take the chance to put guys on the practice squad, and there about 3 guys have been performing pretty well, maybe 3 or 4. And basically, if they need anything, it will take it off the practice squad. So I'm thinking the 4 tight ends, they're so tight in that battle, except for Johnson, as you guys said earlier. I think, and because of the skill sets that each have, and I just feel that Fedoni won't make it to the practice squad. That's my view, but I don't know. I could be wrong. So, and I got three running backs, of course, 3 QBs, but I've got 10 O-linemen. So I've got 25 on the offense.
Okay.
And I've got on the defense, I've got 5 D-line, 5 edge, 5 interior linebackers, 6 CBs, and 4 safeties. So that's 25 again.
Yeah,
so
now, see, you went with 3 running backs, which is really curious to me. And then the other thing is you don't have Bryce Ford Wheaton on the team, and he was their best gunner last year.
I know.
And they're emphasizing special teams.
Mm-hmm.
This year,
again?
This year, the Giants are putting a significant emphasis on special teams. They signed 3 or 4 really dynamite special teams players during the offseason, and they want to dominate on special teams. That is part of this year's game plan, is to tilt the field and dominate on specials. I can't.
So do you think some of that might come from the linebacker? Do you think some of that might come from the linebacker group and the secondary group?
Well, there's no doubt.
I was going to say, if this roster breakdown that you just mentioned were to come to fruition, it would I guess the Giants would be slotting like Chris Board and Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles as the gunners.
Right.
Which they've, Chris Board has had plenty of success as gunner.
He's on the team.
Yeah, he's on the team, and he easily could be one of the 2 gunner spots.
Yes.
But at least as of right now, I would think that Bryce Ford Wheaton might have a slight advantage over the second gunner spot.
I'll say this. I don't think Ford Wheaton is a lock to make the team, but to me, someone's going to have to show that they're significantly better than him. He's one of those guys who I think has a foothold on it and would have to lose a job in order to be taken off the 53.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, as I went through the O linemen too, I was like, okay, 9, 10. I think they're going to have. I mean, when I go through the personnel, I'm not seeing how it could really be less than 10. But again, I could be wrong given the competition.
Well, 9 is the common number at O line.
Yeah.
9 is the common number. But again,
9, yeah.
You know what's going to happen here? Ultimately, this is not. I'm not trying to be funny, but the players will dictate how many are going to be kept at every position, because if you have guys that are really performing extremely well and also giving them special teams value, some of those back end of the depth chart guys that we're talking about are going to sort themselves out by their play during the preseason and during training camp. And then there's always the injury factor, which, guess what? 2 of our receivers got dinged up. Well, now I got to keep a couple extra guys, at least for the start of the season. I mean, that's... So the point is, it's going to be hard. This team is going to have a very hard time cutting the backside of their 53. I believe that.
Yeah. I agree.
Which is a good problem to have.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, good problem to have that has not necessarily been the case in recent years.
Right.
So we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, thanks, guys. Thanks for the time, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
All right, jot down the number for the next time program comes your way. It's going to be in a couple of weeks. We got 2 weeks off here. They're shutting down the production department for 2 weeks. And then we will return for Big Blue Kickoff Live, regular 12:30 p.m. time. And then once training camp actually opens, we're going to probably push the shows back to 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 hour live here to chat on the program. Matt, before we go, anything on the huddle that people need to know about in the next couple of weeks?
We have a bunch of huddles coming out while, there might not be BBK, but we will be posting huddles every couple of days. Pearson, you want to hop on and say what's on the horizon?
Yeah, so today we posted the Mike Kafka and Shane Bowen audio from the ride-alongs. That's a really good conversation with Sean O'Hara. We got tight ends next week, Abdul Carter's defensive line coach, more assistant coaches, and then we got more position groups to come the next week. Offensive line, defensive tackles, standalone Dexter video, Dexter Lawrence. So a lot to come.
Ton of stuff on the Giants huddle. And, oh, by the way, folks, just in case you've been sleeping for the last 24 hours, and I don't think that you have, because let's face it, over the last few weeks, every single Giants fan who I know has asked me about training camp. They all wanted to know, when are those camp practices going to open up? When are we going to get an opportunity to come to training camp and see what the Giants are doing? Just want to make sure you know, go to Giants.com. Yesterday at about 2 o'clock, the posting went out that the Giants' first practice will be on July the 23rd. And all the details and the information are there about how you can try to apply for free tickets to be able to come to training camp, including the 13th of July when the Jets come here for the second of the 2 days that we will be practicing with Gang Green.
Yes, that first practice, July 23rd, will be the first open practice to the public. There are 11 total. The first 10 are all, I believe it's the first 10 training camp practices. Then there's a little bit of a break leading up to the first preseason game, that game against the Bills. And then the following week is the lead up to the Jets game. There are two joint practices with the Jets, one in Florham Park, one here in East Rutherford. That will be the 11th and final open training camp practice to the public. And it should be a fun one because every year the joint practices tend to be probably the best practices of all a training camp because it serves, this year it's after the first preseason game, but it's one of the first times that the players get an opportunity to face off against players that are not their own teammates. And as we see throughout the spring, throughout the first couple of weeks of training camp, guys kind of get tired of going up against the same players each and every day for hours. They want some new competition. Last year we saw that the joint practices was last year with the Lions. They were some feisty practices.
Oh, boy.
Spirited is the word we use. And I'm sure these joint practices with the Jets will be quite spirited again. I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait. We're less than a month away from training camp, Paul.
I was just looking at the New York Jets website to see if they had their training camp rules up because, again, it's the 12th and the 13th. On the 12th, the Giants are down at Florham Park. On the 13th, the teams are here. I do not know yet what the rules are going to be for the Jets. I cannot find anything that indicates if they're going to make that available to season ticket holders, VIPs, suite people.
I don't think they've announced their training camp schedule
I don't
yet.
see anything.
Our announcement yesterday, I don't think that they have done their announcement yet.
So
it remains to be seen.
I don't know.
But last year, the joint practice in Florham Park was open to the public. There were fans there.
Yeah, but it was for season ticket holders only. And then they had a very select few, small section, I believe, of some giant VIP people or whatever.
But last year was also a little bit later. And
it was
the last week.
It was.
Going to the last preseason game. So maybe since this one's a week earlier.
I just don't know.
Maybe that will be open too. But to not take any chances, tickets go available on Giants.com. July 10th, just log on and get your tickets to the one in East Rutherford. You'd rather see them come practice here anyway. Who wants to drive to Florham Park?
There's nothing wrong with going down there and cheering for the Giants on the Jets practice field.
It's true, but
just in case you can't get in here, folks, I'm just saying.
We also don't want their fans coming here and
that's for
taking
sure.
our fans' tickets.
That's for sure. But in any event, folks, that's going to do it now for the next 2 weeks. We are on summer hiatus. We wish you a safe and happy summer. We thank Jennifer Lee Chan of NBC Sports Bay Area for coming on earlier today to discuss our opponent's summer camp preview regarding the San Francisco 49ers. We're coming to you from the Giants Podcast Studio presented by Hackensack Meridian Health. Keep getting better. And this has been Big Blue Kickoff Live presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Happy summer, everybody. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.